Happy Friday. I'm really glad to be here with all of you guys tonight. I know it's been a couple of weeks since I've done one of these live streams. I really just needed to take a week off just for some mental health. And then last week, if you guys weren't aware, I was actually over on Survival Living's channel with him. I was on there with Vancity Prepper and the Milkmaid. So that was a really good chat. If you guys didn't get a chance to check that out, awesome. Thank you so much for letting me know that you can see me and hear me, Uncle Al. I appreciate that. So tonight we're going to be discussing the diesel shortages and really delving into these facts versus fiction. So is this something that we really need to be concerned about? Should this be on our radar? Is it being exaggerated or is it being downplayed? And I really want to take the time to separate out the fact from fiction so that we can have a clearer picture and a better understanding of how to be better prepared for this. So before I get started, I did want to take some time to go ahead and greet you guys in chat. I will try to keep it as brief as possible because I know there are some that don't appreciate, this portion of the live, but I did want to let everybody know how much I value them and I appreciate them. So I'm going to say hi to some of you guys in chat before we go any further. So I do see Nate is here. Thank you so much for being here, Nate, and for helping mod. Hello, Uncle Al. Awesome to see you. Hi, Vancity Prepper. Good to see you. Thank you for modding. I see Lee is here, Cold War Prepper. Thank you for modding as well. Heidi Homestead. Good to see you. Hopefully I said your name correctly. Correct me if I'm wrong. Hello, New York Prepper. Awesome to see you. Hi, Prepper Dog. I hope you and Mrs. Dog are doing awesome. Gary, so good to see you. Thank you for joining. I appreciate it. Hi, Carbon Q. Good to see you as well. Jean is here. Hello, Jean. Hi, Cynthia. I see John Baker is here. Dave Simmons, the Virginia Bushcrafter. Mary Miles. Good to see all of you guys. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. So as always, guys, I am going to go ahead and open this up for some Q&A towards the end. When I do so, if you guys could please put those questions for me in all caps so that I can see them. Sometimes it's hard to see these things as they kind of blow by. So I just want to go ahead and delve right into this. So there is a lot of information floating around right now about less than 25 days of diesel, international diesel reserve. So of course, this is something that is being politicized, as inevitably all of these things are. So right now, Republicans are actually being blamed for fueling this rumor that we're nearly out of diesel. So however, I really want us to take an in-depth look at what's going on, okay? So the truth, we do have less than 25 days of diesel remaining in our reserves, just like we have less than 450 million barrels of crude oil in our reserves, the lowest since 1984. So what we have here is a crisis in the making. And the reason Republicans are bringing this to the forefront right now is to try to get everyone's attention that a very real energy crisis is on the horizon. So I'm going to go ahead and share something with you from Politico real quickly. So we're going to go over here. And the first thing I wanted to share with you is just a couple of tweets here. So Senator Joni Ernst had said that Senator Blackburn is right. And according to the Energy Information Administration, the U.S. has less than a month's supply of diesel fuel. A diesel fuel shortage will impact every American. And then Senator Marsha Blackburn had said many Tennesseans rely on diesel to make a living, from farmers to truckers. And she's correct. The looming diesel crisis will have a ripple effect on our supply chains and the cost of goods. And what I've highlighted here is she says, unleash American energy. And I think this is really important. This is what they are trying to get the Biden administration to do. This is what they are trying to let the American people know, that we do have an energy crisis on the way and we do need to do something about it. So Steve Scalise had said this diesel shortage is threatening to crush Americans, truckers, and farmers, the backbone of our economy. The entire supply chain will feel the impact. And then Representative Representative Mullen had said the looming diesel shortage puts many Oklahomans in an impossible position, whether that is trouble heating their home or affording the increased cost of goods that will result. And he said that he had written to members of Biden's cabinet to express his concern. And I'm glad that they are noticing this. I'm glad that they are, shedding the light on this. And, I think it's important that they do so. It is just like us in the preparedness community trying to share all the information that we are with with everybody that we can, so that everybody knows about the food shortages and everything else that is going on. I think it is important to talk about. So really the question is, will we run out of diesel in 25 days, right? So the short answer is no, not if we continue to produce and import oil, right? But there really is a big problem here, and we need to address it. So when I reported on these diesel shortages back in May with Sassy Gal Prepping, we had mentioned that we had lost over half of the oil refineries on the East Coast. So we're also exporting a lot of our oil overseas, excuse me. So the ongoing issues between Russia and Ukraine have not only elevated the prices because of these ongoing sanctions, it has also made it a lot more difficult for certain countries to access what they need. And I wanted to mention here that the Biden administration had originally blocked more lease sales for offshore drilling in the Gulf of Mexico and Alaska, but they have recently backed off on that. So there are still lawsuits pending, however, some from states that are in favor, some from states that are not in favor, and still others from these environmentalist groups. But the overall consensus is that this is going to be tied up in litigation until at least next year. And from what I gathered, there will be a higher royalty fees associated with these projects, as well as a reduction in how many. So the Biden administration has agreed to move on with 10 new leases in the Gulf of Mexico and one in Alaska. But it's really important to note that this isn't going to do anything for the current situation that we're in, because this is at least 5 years out, and it could be longer if these environmentalist groups are able to sort of, blockade that with more of their stipulations. So in more recent months, we're seeing that a number of refineries in Washington State, excuse me, I'm gonna get a little bit of water. A number of refineries in Washington State and California, Ohio, and elsewhere have actually gone offline because of accidents or maintenance. So demand for diesel has really continued, though, meaning that less of this fuel is going into storage. So this is important because we already know that they have shut down 7 of these refineries on the East Coast. So the reality is, if this demand is higher and we have less refineries in operation, then that will inevitably reduce the ability to put any extra oil, extra diesel into the reserves, which is why we are seeing the supply sort of start to dwindle in our reserves. So we also need to understand, guys, that with these global tensions at this heightened level, the risk for another cyber attack or worse in EMP are much higher. So am I telling you this so that you will panic and start thinking that, everything is going to come to a halt overnight? No, but it's definitely something that we need to be aware of and be preparing for, just in case a cyber attack were to take place. We already know what an impact there was back in 2021 when the Colonial Pipeline was attacked. At least 17 states had declared a state of national emergency, which resulted in shortages for a couple of weeks. So we already have precedents, and the likelihood of another event remains. So what I found interesting is that yet again, we seem to have a split of information here. So there are many telling about low inventories in portions of the US already, where it is being rationed. We've all heard the stories about how heating oil is being rationed as well. So sort of who is telling the truth and who is exaggerating. So I think it's important that we kind of try to sift through what is being presented and get to the bottom of it all. So the information that I'm sharing with all of you guys tonight, if you go to my description box and you scroll down sort of towards the bottom, bottom. I have linked for you everything that I'm using, all of the sources tonight in the reference section. So if you guys want to double check this stuff, you want to go research it for yourselves, I would encourage you to go ahead and do so. I think it's important that everybody does their own research. So this stuff is coming from, sources that I have sought out. This is not sort of off of another channel, third party, he said, she said sort of stuff. So Manfield Energy, a large energy company, is reporting that there will be confirmed shortages in the southeastern U.S., South Carolina, and Georgia included. So they have stated that the poor pipeline shipping economics and historically low diesel inventories are combining to cause shortages in various markets throughout the Southeast. And this agricultural commissioner of Georgia, Gary Black, has said that we're seeing a rise in diesel fuel prices. So when you see these tighter supplies, you're always going to see higher prices. And when those higher prices for basic inputs, your fuel, your labor, those kinds of things that we've seen escalate over time, the natural result of economics, right, supply and demand, is that that's going to be reflected in the retail price that you and I pay. So he says that we are down about 11 or so refineries in America since the health crisis. And some of the less efficient ones were actually casualties of the health crisis. So that's really reduced our productive capacity. So when he says what it comes down to is that this shortage won't just affect one specific group of people, and that everyone across the board needs to start preparing to see these prices rise as we near the end of the year. He says, as all of us consumers, we head towards Christmas, the shipping, trucking, all the things for consumer goods, our food is really a much broader area of concern for all of us. So what I'm getting from this is that the demand is only going to surge even more because of the holidays. So will we see shortages in some areas of the country? I think we will. But more importantly, I think that these prices are just going to continue to surge again. So they've already risen 33% for the month of November, and they're projected to climb even higher. So the average price for diesel right now in the US is sitting at $5.30 per gallon. And that is expected to go up another 15 to 20 cents in the next couple of weeks. So to me, this is an even bigger issue because people are already strapped with these continued price hikes, right? So as it costs these companies more for transportation, then naturally that is going to be passed on to you and I, the consumer. So that, coupled with the current rising inflation, it only stands to reason that we really need to continue to do our best to prepare. So I know not everyone, can keep running out at breakneck speed and putting items aside that they need, but I do think it's important that we get a little bit of extra every time that we go to the store, and we keep this stuff at the forefront of our minds, understanding that this could not only start causing, these product and food shortages again, diminishing what's available to us on the store shelves, it could also become more difficult for us to continue to afford to prepare. So diesel really is the heartbeat of our nation. It's used in trucks, in boats, in barges. It's commonly used in public transportation and school buses. And it also powers, most of the farm and construction equipment in the US. And we also need to remember that trucks transport the gasoline to the pumps to refuel them. So without the trucks, we won't have any fuel either. And as the price of diesel climbs, so too does the price of gasoline, because like I said, gas is actually dependent upon diesel. So the other point that I wanted to bring up, guys, is that the Mississippi River is actually very low right now because of drought conditions. And this is actually something that I had brought up when I was on the Angry Preppers live stream several weeks back. And I had told everyone then that if this waterway began to be impacted, it would be a huge detriment to our nation because we transport 175 million tons of freight each year through it. So apparently these low water conditions have actually turned the Mississippi River from a multi-lane interstate into a 2-lane highway. So that is huge, guys. They're getting really backed up. It's hard for them to get the product through to us that we need. So also we need to remember that the railroad has still not worked out a deal with its union workers. So there are two rail unions that have recently voted down a labor deal that's needed to avert a strike in the coming months. So that's something else that we need to just sort of file away in the recesses of our mind and keep an eye on. So, diesel inventories in the New York and New England markets are facing an acute crisis. So, they are down over 50% since last year, and they're at their lowest level since 1990, according to Andy Lipo, the president of Lipo Oil Associates. So Lipo said that the East Coast refineries are making as much diesel as they can, and they're dependent on tankers and barges for supply. And he said something here that I think is really important that we also need to pay attention to. He said any weather delay causes a terminal to run out of product. And I think that a lot of us have heard that this could be a potentially harsh winter. So we could have a lot more storms than typical. And I think it's important that we remember that weather delays are definitely going to affect this as well. And that's going to put, another issue in there that we don't need. So the Midwest is also seeing some supply constraints pushing up the cost for farmers. So in visiting with a number of farmers, the consensus is that the diesel costs are just one more incursion into profitability, and they are already struggling, as we all know. So, as far as getting supplies, the farmers that are most dependent upon the Mississippi River are experiencing the biggest challenge. So, a couple of farmers have actually said that their diesel supply from their vendor is on a day to day basis now. So, it's really touch and go what they are able to get for diesel. So, in order for the Northeast to receive more diesel, the fuel needs to be imported from another country or a tanker from the Gulf Coast. But that is not allowed because of the Jones Act. And this is also known as the Merchant Marine Act of 1920, which prohibits a foreign vessel from transporting all the goods between two U.S. ports. So, according to marine traffic, the 55 Jones Act tankers that we have are being used. But they say that one way to add more supply quickly would be for DHS to temporarily waive the act for foreign vessels to move the fuel. And they give this example of how if we move 300,000 barrels of diesel from Houston to Boston, it costs approximately 16 cents per gallon on one of these Jones Act tankers. But if we were to have a foreign flag tanker carry that same amount of diesel, then that would be reduced to 8 cents per gallon. It would be cut in half. And they say that would be $1 million in savings per tanker. And that's one of the reasons why these energy traders favor using foreign flag tankers versus these Jones Act tankers. So here again, we see a situation where we just have these regulations, this red tape in the way. It could be removed. And while, $1 million per tanker is a lot, I'm sure a lot of that would go into their pocketbook, but it would also probably start, reducing some of these costs that we are incurring as well. So this is something that could be done. But this Andy Lipo says that he doesn't think that they will do it until it's too late. And I have to agree with him because this seems to be, something that we witness time and time again. They are very reactive rather than proactive. So something could be done, but it will be, too little too late again, right? So the other thing is, guys, that traders are actually diverting tankers away from Europe to the US because the price of US diesel is now higher than in Europe, so they can make a larger profit. And it always comes back to money and profitability, right? But what I want to point out here, and I think this is important, is that they're talking about how these regions, including New England, are going to be in competition with Europe for diesel supplies next year. It's going to intensify. And that is because this EU ban on Russian refined product purchases is going to go into full swing. So right now they have just slowly been weaning off of Russian oil, but these sanctions as of February 5th are going to go into full swing. And when they do, guys, the EU has to replace on average 2 million tons of diesel imports from Russia. That is an absolutely astronomical amount. And I know that we had been sending some of our oil to Europe. Obviously, we're still importing some as well. But what the bigger picture here is, and what I want you guys to understand, is that this competition is going to become worse. And so with that, that means these prices are going to go higher still. So where we are seeing the prices climb, it is going to continue to steadily increase. This is not something that is going to be reduced anytime in the near future. These prices are just going to keep rising. So, if we were to enter a global conflict, we need to understand that it's going to have an even greater impact on the rationing of fuel, and not just diesel either. So, as I stated in my previous live, during World War II, Americans were limited to about 3 gallons of gasoline per week, or about 45 miles of drive time. So, can you even begin to imagine what that would look like for us? You know, many of us couldn't even commute to our jobs to and fro for one day with that volume of fuel available to us. So, I honestly believe that if they don't get a full handle on this crisis that's unfolding, we could see energy lockdowns in our future. So as we know, the global elites are doing everything that they can to get their tentacles wrapped around fossil fuels and try to choke them out with their green energy initiatives. And I honestly think that this is, the number one reason why we are in an energy crisis at this point in time. So poor policies and decision making to thrust us into green energy when the technology is just not there yet. It's really greatly impacting our ability to produce energy for all of the people of the world. So, scaling back on oil refineries and allowing so many to go offline without constructing replacements, which, by the way, guys, it takes an average of 15 to 18 months to construct a oil refinery and have it begin to produce oil. So, this is not just a mere oversight. They know what is going on. They know that these energy initiatives are crippling and that we're not able to go to clean energy as quickly as they would like. And that is why I believe that they are working on a way to not only decrease the world's population, they will also find a way to force us to use less energy, which will inevitably result in a type of energy lockdown. So there was an article that came out the end of October on the World Economic Forum's website. I've also linked that for you guys in the description box. You guys can go check it out. And it was titled, "The Race to Net Zero is Affordable, and Here's Why." So interestingly enough, they contradict themselves as soon as they mention Europe. So what they are trying to say is that the long-term, decades out investment will level out over time. So they say that there is a tension between short term pain and long term benefits. They say, to take Europe as an example, households will see, and they say will see, their energy expenditure rising sharply until the energy supply shocks are alleviated, say around 2025. Why is it that they know this? They know exact dates. They know that this will happen. It is happening. And they say that by the late 2020s, household energy expenditures in Europe will be around the same levels as in 2021 in nominal terms. So the subsequent decades will see stabilization of household energy expenditure at levels 10% less on average than in 2021, and gradually declining to 30% less by mid-century. Well, many people that are already, older, elderly, they're not even going to see this because by mid-century they won't be here. So they are supposed to go through all of this pain for the next several years with this in mind. So they also say that the transition requires important investments, both from governments in the way of energy infrastructure, industries in the way of new production plants, and individuals in the way of, listen to our contributions, buildings, insulation, electric vehicles, which we already knew, and heat pumps. So, the way I see it, these people are clearly out of touch. They have no grasp on reality. People can't afford different building insulation, electric cars, and heat pumps when they're just worried about keeping a roof over their heads and food on their table. And most of us don't want to know where our energy is coming from. We just want to know that it's there, that it's reliable, and that it's affordable. So, telling us that we just have to, sort of take it on the chin so that we can have benefits decades down the road is just not acceptable or comforting in any way, shape, or form. So the truth is also that their projections are skewed in their favor, anyhow, which we know. And the likelihood of us actually saving anything, any money in the long term, is another lie that we're being sold. So, to sort of wrap all of this up, I do believe that we are going to begin to see diesel shortages, at least in the eastern half of the US. So, will it be crippling? No, I think that's highly unlikely, at least in the immediate future. Long term, though, if they don't start addressing these issues with better policies that allow cheaper transport of oil and get serious about, getting more refineries online to meet the demand, we are going to see a steady downhill slide. And it's just like with the food crisis that we talk about all of the time. This is something that is snowballing, and it is gradually getting larger and larger until it's going to be rolling downhill full steam ahead, and there's going to be no stopping it. So, at a minimum, I do believe that we are going to see the price of diesel continue to climb, which is inevitably going to drive up the prices on all of our goods further still. So, I would really encourage all of you guys to continue to prepare, keep putting up the food, the water, the ways to stay warm. If you guys haven't been focusing on any of your medical needs and you need antibiotics, I would encourage you to check out Jace Medical. I do have a link in my description box that will save you $10. You don't have to purchase it from me. You can look at, there are multiple prepping channels that are also promoting this company. There are other alternatives, but I would encourage you to look into those sorts of things, because that is a real concern and something that you should be prioritizing. So, ultimately, it really doesn't matter if this energy crisis is manufactured or if there are many components that are kind of contributing to it. The reality is that it is happening, and that we need to be doing what we can to prepare for it and to prepare our families for it. So, I'm going to go ahead and open this up for some Q&A from you guys now. I'm going to scroll up here while you guys are doing that. Please put your questions for me in all caps if you have any, or your comments. I'm going to go ahead and scroll up here and grab anything that you guys have been sharing with me that I may have missed. LG says that sounds like they planned it. I don't mean to be a grouch, but it sounds like it was a bad plan, if you ask me. Yes, definitely. I do believe this has all been planned. And I've talked about this quite a bit on my channel. I think it's obvious at this point, especially when you guys, all the other articles and things aside, if you go directly to the World Health Organization, you go directly to the World Economic Forum's websites, it's in plain English. It's right there for you to see. They tell you what they're doing, what they're working on. And that's just the way it is. So Rose says, who else wonders if maybe they won't try to implement rationing of goods, services based on vac status? I mean, I have my own ideas about the way everything is headed. I think that at some point we will see that, but I think it's going to go even further than that. I do believe that at some point these measures of control are going to come down to you either do exactly as we say or you don't get anything. I don't even think it's going to be rationing, and you just won't get anything. And that's another reason why it's so important for us to prepare and to learn to try to build up our skills as we can. So I'm going to scroll down here and see if I missed any questions from you guys. I don't see anything in here yet. Nancy says, I think the U.S. will fare better compared to most. There may be civil unrest. People will hurt. I've been collecting food for Salvation Army. We have so much mental illness and drug addicts. Yes, Nancy. overall, I do think as a nation, we obviously have a lot more resources at our disposal. The problem is that we have become so reliant on importing so many of our goods now, especially when it comes to things like our medicines, and the key components for those from places like China and Mexico and India, that I do think that our medical needs are in crisis mode. I think something like that could spiral out of control very quickly. The other thing is that I mentioned on my channel before is that, we don't make a lot of our stuff now. We import so much of this stuff, and it would be very difficult for them to sort of shift to us beginning to manufacture that again. And even if we could, it's like, do we have enough of the plastics factories operating for the packaging? Even if we grow the food, which we know we have the ability to feed our nation, do we have the packaging? Do we have the transportation? Do we have, the ability to fix machinery when it goes down if we can't import those parts that we need and those chips that we need from Taiwan? These are the things that we have to think about when we're talking about how we are better off, because in some ways we are, and in other ways we really aren't. Did anybody, let's see, I don't see anything on here. Talking about football, I see on here. We could see significant civil unrest very soon, even next week. Yes, I do agree with that. I think that we need to really, and that's why, for me, guys, I've just been focused on, we have a lot of the stuff that we need now. We've been prepping for quite a long time. I know there are some that are newer to the community that maybe aren't have not, but I know a lot of you guys have. And so for me, I have been more focused on how do I fortify my home? How do I protect our structure? How do I defend in case things were to go awry and we were to have a situation where we needed to, hunker down and defend our home? Because I think that is important. I think that's something that we need to be thinking about. Especially for those of us that live in a more densely populated area than others. So that's where my thoughts have been. I wouldn't underestimate the enemy. They have a ton of resources and assets. They work like a Swiss clock. Any weakness is them appearing weak where they are strong. Yes, we can't underestimate them ever. We really do need to really do everything that we can to be prepared and to be ready for what's coming our way. And like I said, they've told us what's coming our way. We know that they are definitely going to be rolling out these CBDCs next year. They're going to start those pilot programs here in our country. They're already doing them in other countries. This stuff is in the works. It isn't slowing down. And so we really need to do all we can to get prepared for that and get our families ready. Yes, I agree. Prepper dog, WEF can go kick rocks. I love that one. That's great. So if you guys don't have any questions, which I'm looking in the chat and I don't see that you guys do, I'm going to go ahead and close then. I don't want to keep you guys on here all night. If I'm sure there are other live streams going on tonight. I'm sure you guys all have other things going on as well. I wanted to keep this sort of short. I know that sometimes these things can get pretty lengthy and it's difficult, especially for those that want to watch the replay. Sometimes you don't have an entire hour or hour plus to devote to getting this information. So really, I just wanted to sort of condense this. This is something that I felt was important to talk about and to address. And, while we are, looking at, yes, we have 25 days remaining. That doesn't mean we're going to run out at that 25-day marker, but it is something that we need to be aware of because of all of the other things that I did mention. So I really appreciate all of you guys. I did want to go ahead and close with a scripture because that is something that I always do. So we're going to go ahead and put this on screen and share it with you guys. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. Jeremiah 29:11. And I think that is so important that we hold on to that, knowing that God does have a plan for us. He doesn't intend to harm us, He does want us to prosper. And with everything that is going on, we are going to need to have faith to move these mountains in our lives. Faith that when we have done everything that we can, that He is going to help carry us through, that He is going to carry it the rest of the way for us and make a way of escape. We need Him. And it looks like I spelled Jeremiah wrong. Sorry, guys. I just noticed that. But anyways, I appreciate each and every one of you guys. Thank you so much for joining me, for taking time out of your busy schedules to spend with me. I appreciate each and every one of you guys. You guys are wonderful, and without you, I wouldn't have a channel. So never think that I don't appreciate you or that I don't see you. I try to respond to every comment. It's just who I am and what I've done since the beginning. I will continue to try to do that. So all of you guys, I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Thank you so much, and God bless all of you. See you later.